All right, welcome to the channel, everybody. Today we are going to be doing a full setup on my 2002 Gibson Les Paul. So here we go. As I mentioned, today we're going to do a setup on my Les Paul. If you just came here for the specs, that's cool. In a few seconds here, I'm going to put up on the screen a spec sheet. If you want to pause it, copy it, that's cool. I also included a link in the description for a PDF download of these specs. Again, remember, these are just starting points. They're not set in stone. If you want to grab a copy of that, it's in the description below. It's free. I don't need your email or anything like that. Okay? So if you're sticking around for the rest of the video, a couple housekeeping things I just want to get out of the way. One, you might hear my fan in the background. It's pretty hot in here, but I'm trying to deal with it. Two, I'm actually wearing this camera around my neck, so I can try to give you like a first-person view here. So if it's a little bouncy at times, I do apologize. It's the only way I can film videos and use both my hands at the same time. So let's go over just a couple things. This is just to hold the neck of the guitar when it's laid down here. Some string cutters, manual string winder. It works just fine. I prefer, if you have a lot of guitars, you might want to get something like this that just plugs into your drill. Much easier to wind and take off strings. Screwdriver for the truss rod cover, truss rod adjustment tool here for Gibson. Capo, a ruler that measures in millimeters and 30 seconds. If you can use one of these. Feeler gauges also work. This is a custom feeler gauge that I got from Music Nomad, not sponsored by them or anything. A tuner, some fretboard oil. Sometimes it's a good idea when you have all your strings off already, if it's been a while, to do that. And for this little gauge here, if I can get it. Again, another Music Nomad tool, not sponsored, but they do make a lot of cool stuff. Set of strings, little cleaning tool to clean anything once you have the guitar apart. All right, so with that out of the way, let's get to it. All right, so for me, I always like to check and see where I'm at before I start anything, kind of a pre-setup, if you will. So I'm just tuning it up right now while I'm doing that. So this guitar, my buddy's been borrowing it since about April, and I just got it back yesterday. So I definitely know it's time to get need some love. There's also a different set of strings on here. There's a set of 10s, and I'm going back to 9s. This guitar just likes 9s a lot better. So again, I always like to start, you need a good reference point of where you're kind of starting from. This isn't absolutely necessary, but it's just a good idea to kind of see where you're at. If you want to skip any part of the video, I do have links to every part of the setup here. So you don't have to watch the whole thing, because this is going to be pretty long. So, okay, so we're in tune here. Now let's get it up on the bench and see what we got. All right, so with a capo on the first fret, and I'm holding down at the last fret here. I always like to do all these measurements in the playing position. It's a good idea to do it that way, because that's the way the guitar is going to play. So I usually come down here around the 7th or 8th fret to check that, using the 10 on my. I usually like my guitars somewhere between 8 and 10, about 25 millimeters or so. Everybody's going to be different, but I can already see with this that it's not touching, so this tells me that I'm going to have to adjust the truss rod. So I know that already going in. And one thing to note is what I do now. Here, whenever I do a string change or something, I always put a little piece of tape on the back here that tells me the last time I did something and what I put on it. You can see it's been since March. Like I said, it's been over at a buddy's house. So I put Ernie Ball 10s on here on March 24th of this year. I had it in standard tuning, E standard. I live in the desert. It's very hot here, very humid, or very dry, so I'm not surprised the neck needs a little bit of tweaking. So at least we know where we're at and where we're going from here. All right, I went ahead and cut the strings off. I haven't taken them all off yet. You can see I left the high E on there just because these Gibson, tail pieces, you take them all off at the same time, this thing will fall off, damage your finish. I know some people are going to freak out. There's debate. Do you cut the strings when they're on there? Do you take them off by hand? I've been cutting them in the middle like this for years. I've never had a problem with anything. So that's just, personal preference. Like I mentioned, the drill makes it a lot easier to just take these off. You don't have to sit there and wind it forever. I will not bore you with all the details of me taking the strings off. So we'll come back when everything is off. All right, for this final string, the high E, I'm just going to hold this right here while I stick the drill on here. Actually, quite hard to do this with a camera around your neck. Just loosen it and it comes right off. Boom. Don't have to worry about it damaging your finish or anything like that. So if you'll notice, I haven't taken the strings out of here. I top wrapped this one. I know there's going to be some controversy on that, but what you want to do, I'm going to give you a bonus tip at the end of this video. What you want to do is actually hang on to these. Do not throw these away, the bottom pieces of this. Okay? There's going to be a bonus tip coming at the end of the video. All right, with everything off, this is a good time to inspect certain things. I like to take the bridge off. Just, again, make sure you remember the orientation that it was. So get the little handy tool here, or a rag, or whatever you have. Just kind of do a little bit of housekeeping here, a little dusting. Inspect the fretboard. Make sure everything's good there. Oh, this little pickup ring, you can see it's sticking up there. That's more cosmetic, should be fine. So this is a good time to oil the fretboard. Now, again, how much you use, that's up to you. I like to kind of put some on here, just a little, and then kind of skip around because the rag will soak it up. Let that sit for a sec. You really don't need to. Again, this stuff depends on where you live. Like I said, I live in the southwest of the US. It is extremely hot here, humid, or not humid. I don't know why I keep saying that. It's not humid at all here. We hardly got any rain this summer, so it's been very, very dry. A lot of my guitars, the necks have needed adjusting like a lot just because of that. So you're just going to kind of rub it in here. Not too crazy. Since you already have the strings off, again, it's a good idea. Now, normally I would do like a fret polishing and all that, but I'm not going to do that in this video. That's more maybe another time. Then I like to flip it over, just you don't want any like residue just hanging out on here. Should be good. Looks nice. Don't see any residue hanging there. Get my little rag, kind of inspect the headstock a little bit. Now, I already know that I'm going to need to adjust the truss rod. I'm fairly confident of that. Since I already have the strings off, I'm going to just go ahead and remove it now anyway. Watch these little screws, man. They freaking lose these things. All right, so we got that off. Truss rod ready to go. Everything's good, cleaned, looks nice. Now it's time for the strings to go on. All right, since we don't have any string tension on this bridge or this tailpiece yet, it's a good idea. I always put something back here just so when you put it on, it doesn't, fly off and damage your guitar. So we put that here, that, just so it doesn't fly off. Hold it with one hand. Try to keep tension on it if you can. And you want to try to line up the holes, the string holes. I won't show you every single string, but you want to try to line it up like this. And now, when it comes to strings wrapping, there's so many different ways to do it. I found for me, I just take one tuner length, I go back while holding up so that it doesn't fall down, I go back, and then I just wrap around the tuner like that. That's it. And it's pretty tight already, so now you don't really have to worry about the tailpiece falling off. And then we just tighten up. Oh, came off. See that? This E, usually the low E is hard to get that to stay. There we go. All right. You want this to be over top. Make sure it's riding the saddle properly. Not super tight right yet. We'll get there. So that's how you do all the strings. I'm going to go ahead and do all these and then we'll come back. One thing I did want to mention is before you put all the strings on, you want to put something in the nut, whether it's 3-in-1 oil, pencil lead, nut sauce, whatever it is. Just get it in there. You can see here I use pencil. I don't have any problems. This guitar stays in tune pretty well, but you definitely want to get something in here to kind of help, you know, keep the strings from sticking when they're sliding back and forth. So like I said, as you can see, I use pencil lead here and it works just fine. So I wanted to mention that before you put all the strings on. I already did the low E. All right, so as we're getting the strings on here, you want to try and get it as close to pitch as you can. I always put it up just a little, just simply because as you put the strings on, the neck is going to tighten, the strings are going to like loosen anyway, but just get it as close as you can. And then once you have all the strings on, then go back and adjust. So take this one as you're tuning. I'll just show one here. Again, why do I top wrap this? Well, you know, every guitar behaves differently. My SG, no top wrapping on that. The other Les Pauls, nope, I don't top wrap those either. Just for some reason, this Les Paul just plays, I don't know, just plays a lot better. Experiment with it, you never know, it might work for you. I mean, it does make them easier to bend, especially if you're using 9s. One thing you'll notice too is I haven't cut any of the string tips off, or the remaining, you know, the remaining string at the top here. Well, I do that for a reason. The reason is because if there's a problem, after I get all these strings on, if there's a problem, this tuner actually is pretty jacked up. I'm going to need a new one here soon. So if there's a problem with the guitar strings, some reason I need to take the strings off, well, if I cut all these off, then it's going to be impossible to get them back on. I don't want to waste a whole set of strings that I just put on there. So I don't cut these off until the very, very last step. All right, now we got all the strings up. We are retuned. We're sitting in the playing position. But before we check the relief on this, I just want to mention one thing. All right, before we go and check the neck relief on the Les Paul, I just think it's important to understand kind of what's happening with the neck when you take your strings on and off. So imagine this yardstick is the neck of your guitar, right? It's perfectly straight. You know, when you put the strings on it, ideally the neck, you know, it's gonna like, now obviously this is an extreme example, but it's going to bow like this, right? The string tension from the top up here is pulling on the guitar, so the guitar is essentially like, you know, folding in on itself essentially. I know this is an extreme example, but this is what I mean. So when you take the strings off to do a string change, sometimes the neck, it slowly like just goes kind of back to, you know, what it does. Every neck is different. In another extreme example, if your truss rod is too tight, it's going to look like this. Again, another extreme example. So what happened is, you'll see here in a moment with this Les Paul, is that I had 10s on it, 10 gauge strings on it, and I'm going down to 9s. So what happened was the 10s were on there, the neck was like this. I took the measurements in the beginning. It was probably like, it was pretty high. It was like 14, 15 thousandths. When I took the strings off, the neck kind of relaxed. Then I put the 9s on and it only bowed it a little bit. So you'll see here in a moment when I check it, it's almost exact. It went down quite a bit. It's at just shy over 10 thousandths. So I will be tightening it just a little bit, but it didn't need as much tightening as I originally thought, simply because, again, there's less tension on the neck at this point. All right, so now that we got that out of the way, we got our capo, we're retuned. We got our capo on the first fret. We're holding down at the last fret here, and we're going for the 7th or 8th fret, and we go for the 8. And as you can see, about here, very hard to see with this camera. So I always recommend doing this in the playing position, because it just makes more sense. So in this case, it did lower it a lot, but it still needs to be tightened just a little bit. So now we're going to do that. So I don't loosen the strings when I tighten the truss rod. I really don't find it necessary. You can if you want. Now, if you're not comfortable with this part, this is the part that usually freaks everyone out, doing this part, the truss rod. It's really not that big of a deal. Because remember, we got our tool here, but remember, let me zoom in, no matter what, if you're not comfortable doing it, that's okay. You can take it somewhere and have them do it. But, worst case scenario, you really can't, you can't turn the, it won't go, like, you can't twist it all the way around at once. You can only go a certain, a certain distance. This actually looks like this nut actually might be loose. Oh yeah, so truss rod nut is actually loose in here. So what you want to do, right, is put this in here, but look, I can't go any further than that. That's it. That's as far as I can go. So you're not going to be able to, like, twist it all the way around and everything. It just doesn't work that way. Unless you have a wrench that goes in this way, then yeah, you could keep turning and turning. But the tool they give you this for a reason. So you can't really go around. At least that's my opinion. So we're just going to give this a turn, and that's it. And now we'll recheck. All right, so we have tightened the truss rod again, and now we are ready to check. We're tuned up. Capo on the first, and on last, pressing down, 7th, 8th fret. I am at 0.08, and that's it. That's barely, yep, okay. So we're going to call that good. So again, remember, if you're doing this, you just got to keep tightening, loosening until you get to your perfect spot. There is no exact number. It's whatever is good for you and doesn't cause string buzzing. So now that we're done with the neck, now it's time to check out the action. And again, remember, just as a side note, when it comes to relief on the neck, if you want more relief, meaning you want the neck to go like that, you go to the left, right? Lefty, loosey. If you want the neck to tighten, meaning less relief, you want to tighten the neck, you turn it to the right if you want your neck to go like this. Again, extreme examples, but that's how it works. It's really not that hard, and again, it's going to be really hard for you to do damage unless you just turn constantly. So, hope that helps. All right, now it's time to check the action with our handy dandy little card here. You can see, camera focus. This comes in 64ths, so each line 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 64ths. That's why it's such a good gauge to have. So again, I always like to check in the playing position. Let's flip this up and measuring at the 12th fret. Now, per the spec sheet, we're looking for 5 64ths on the bass side, which, as you can see, this is just a little bit low. It's right between 3 and 4, so I'm going to need to raise that a little bit. And the treble side actually looks okay. That's at about, we wanted, I believe, 3 64ths. So that's right, pretty much right there. I might raise it a tad, but definitely this side needs to be raised. So the only bad part about Les Paul style guitars is, in order to raise this, you should loosen the strings. If it was going lower, that would be one thing. There's a lot of tension on this, so trying to raise this by hand when the strings are tight, not really a good idea. It's very difficult to do. Please don't use like a wrench or anything. These are very easy to turn if the strings are loose. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen up the strings because we just need to raise the bass side just a little bit. Okay, with the strings all loosened, really once the strings are pretty loose, all you have to do, if you want to raise this up, you turn it to the left, right? You're loosening so the screw comes out. If you need to lower this, you turn it to the right, just like a regular screw. It'll go in more and fall down. So I just turned it to the left just a little bit. Let's see where we're at here. And that's probably going to be good, actually, right there. Maybe just a tad. Just turn it just a little bit. I'm not really going to mess with the treble side. Maybe a little bit more. Again, slowly is what you want to do here. You don't want to get crazy. That's probably good once I retune the strings. Okay, cool. Now tune it back up and see where we're at. All right, now that the action is good, we're at 5 64ths on the bass side and 3 64ths on the treble. Last thing before we check intonation is to check the nut. Now there's a couple different ways you can do this, but I mean, I find this to be the easiest. If you just fret each string at the 3rd fret here and just kind of tap, it's hard to see right here, there should just be just a little tiniest of gaps here, just a little bit, and you want to do that down each string. This looks good here. These all look pretty good. You can measure it with a feeler gauge. You'll notice if it's too high, if you go to fret like let's say an E chord, right? You'll notice if you have it way too high. If your strings are too high here, it's going to be really hard to fret doing your cowboy chords. If it's too low, you're going to notice a lot of buzz when you're doing it. This guitar, the nut is good on this one. So that's how you check the nut. And I wanted to just mention, again, the reason that I didn't clip these off, you'll notice they're still here, is sometimes I've had it happen before where I clip these off too early and then I have to loosen all the strings to adjust the bridge, and the string comes flying out and then I can't get it back in, and now I have to get a whole new set of strings. So again, my personal preference, I just leave these on until everything is completely done. It's not hurting anyone, it's not, it's not going to do anything. All right, now it's time for some intonation. I really don't find that you have to do this in the playing position. This is probably the most tedious part of setting up a guitar because it requires a lot of back and forth. So I'll just do 2 strings on here. I won't, make you sit through the whole 6, but we'll just do the low E and the A and show you. So first, you want to make sure that the guitar is in tune, which it is. Maybe just off a tad. Okay. And then basically you want to fret at the 12th fret and see, hopefully the notes match. Oh, you can see here, it's pretty close. Oh. It's pretty close. So what you want to do is these little screws down here, you want to turn it If it's a little flat, you want it to come inwards, and then you got to retune, check for tuning, and then do the same process. Like I said, this is the tedious part of the job. It's pretty close. Yep. It's probably the fan and stuff moving things around. So you want to get these exactly in sync with each other. Make sure it's in tune. Check again. Cool. So then the A, same thing. Make sure the A is in tune here. Let's go up to the 12th fret. That one's a little bit flat. Just back and forth, constantly back and forth. Okay, oh, and of course, as my battery is going low on this. Of course it is. Why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't it go low? Hopefully I can get this string before the battery dies. Alright, so we're close. We're very close. Oh. Okay, so you got the idea. I'm just going to finish up this one, and then I won't make you sit for the rest of the string. So that's how you do the intonation. Intonation is done. So everything is pretty much done now. The last final thing, again, and this is personal preference, there are measurements for it exactly, but it's going to be a matter of taste. We'll talk about the pickups, the height of the pull pieces and everything. So just the easiest way, put your finger on the very last fret, push down, and then kind of see where your pull pieces are, right? If they're not, as long as they're not touching, you can raise it up and down if you need to. Matter of personal preference, like I said. None of these are good. They could probably come down a hair. This one could probably come up a hair, but all personal preference. As long as the string isn't touching the pull pieces when you push this down, everything else is just personal preference. All right, one final thing I wanted to say is this is something extra. Obviously, you don't have to do this, but I'm old. I forget a lot of stuff, and I just kind of do an old school method. A guy showed me this, 25 years ago. So every time I do a string change or a setup, I like to document what I did, so that way the next time in a couple months when I go to change strings or whatever, I remember exactly what I did at this time. So you can see I put Ernie Ball. I know my writing's sloppy. Ernie Ball 9-42. I set it up in E standard, and I changed everything on September 8th of 2024. So 3 months from now, when I look at the back of this guitar and decide if I need to change strings, or I know exactly where I'm starting from, I can get the same brand of strings, everything the same. So hope that helps some people. Okay, here's your little bonus tip. This is really only necessary if you're top wrapping, and again, it's a matter of personal preference. You see how this string is sticking out a little bit, but this one is not. Well, if I turn this around and go to top wrap it, you'll notice down here that the part of the string that is like wound at the bottom is touching right here. That can be prone to string breaking if you top wrap it. On this side, you'll notice that that is not like that at all. I wish it would focus. Okay. So the reason is, when you're changing your strings, if you take the ball end, you see right here, so the ball end of the old string, if you put it on here, it fits perfectly into the hole right there, and the string will stop. So all of this will not be cutting into your tailpiece. I don't do it this way, but I've seen people do it. And again, I don't have problems breaking strings, but if that's something that you want to try, if you top wrap, it'll do it like that, and you won't have the mess at the bottom right there like you do with this one. Again, all this stuff is a matter of personal preference. I've never had a problem breaking strings, but just something I wanted to show you in case you wanted to try it. So save the ball ends of your strings if you need to. All right, that is a wrap. That does it. This Les Paul is set up, ready to play. The intonation is done. Everything is done and ready to go. Make sure, give it a day or two, because some of this stuff will change again as the tension and everything changes. Recheck it in a day or two, see where the neck is, right? Retune everything like that. Don't forget to grab, if you want, the spec sheet that I showed earlier is in the description. It's a free link. You can go ahead and get it. I appreciate you guys watching. I'm sure I missed something. If you have any questions or anything I missed, please feel free to put it in the comments, or again, any questions you have, feel free to put that in the comments. I hope this was helpful for some people. I know sometimes this stuff can be intimidating, but as things in the world start to cost more and more money, this is something really that you can do at home. There's really not much to it, and once you do it once or twice, I mean, it's pretty simple. So I hope everyone has a great day. Take care.